everyone, it's Amanda, and today I'm doing my September 2014 reading wrap-up. I think I read 10 books, so I'm just going to get started. I'm going to try to make this shorter than normal because I tend to ramble, but I'm going to try not to do that. Okay, the first book I read in September was Dr. Sleep by Stephen King. I took it out of the library. It is the sequel to The Shining, and the cover looks like that. And I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I was a little bit disappointed with it just because it just was not, it didn't have the magic that The Shining had, in my opinion. I enjoyed it, but for a Stephen King book, I've read many books that were much better than that in his genre. And I tend to rate Stephen King. I put him at a much higher standard than a lot of other authors because he is just so brilliant and his writing is so good that I kind of rate him against himself. And in his rating scale in my brain, I gave him a 3. The next book I read was Impulse by Ellen Hopkins. And I was looking forward to reading an Ellen Hopkins book because I haven't read any of her books yet. And this was pretty good. It's about a group of teenagers who are all in a psychiatric inpatient facility because they have all attempted suicide. And they just get to know each other and things happen. This was very interesting. It reminded me a lot of the time that I spent. I had to do 12 weeks of field work for my job, and I had to be in, and I did 12 weeks in a psychiatric facility. I was on the adolescent unit, which was kind of weird because I was only 20, so I was not much older than a lot of those other people that were there, but it was very interesting, and it was very well done because it definitely evoked the feelings that happen there and everything that goes on at a psychiatric facility. So I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. Next, I read Tiger Eyes by Judy Blume, another library book. I saw this book was on Netflix, and it made me want to, or the movie was on Netflix, it made me want to read the book. So this is one of the covers. That's not the cover I read. Oh, I'm so sorry. That's bad. There you go. Anyway, it is about a teenager girl named Davy who has a really hard time. She has to move from Atlantic City to New Mexico because of something bad that has happened. And she meets a guy, and it's just really well done. I had never read any Judy Blume books that were geared toward older teens. I always read the middle grade Judy Blume books that I loved when I was a kid. But I was looking forward to reading a middle grade, and it was very good. Okay, then I read, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read I Am Not a Serial Killer by Dan Wells. This book started out so good. I loved how this book was going. I thought it was really, really interesting. It is about a boy who is a sociopath. He's self-proclaimed a sociopath, and he works, his mom owns a funeral home, and so she embalms people, and he helps with that. And he has some urges. He feels like he wants to kill people, and it just was really, really good. And then it took a turn, and I just didn't really like the way it was going anymore. So I started out, the first half of the book would have got a 5 stars from me, but then the second half of the book just wasn't my thing. I know a lot of people like that part of the story, but I wanted it to, I guess, be more realistic is what I would say. So I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I attempted to read Naked in Death by J.D. Robb, which is book 1 in her In Death series that has no end in sight. I liked it. It was okay, but I kept thinking in the back of my mind, 40 books, at least 40 books, and it just wasn't good enough for me to make the commitment to read all the books. I thought it was good, but I've heard there's a lot of sexual content in the series, and that's just not my thing. So I just returned the book to the library and moved on. The next book I read, I have been reading Babysitter's Club books because I bought a huge lot from eBay of Babysitter's Club books and Sweet Valley books, and I want to read them in order throughout time, which these are super quick to read. I can read them in a day, in a couple hours. But I read Dawn and the Impossible 3, which is book 5, and this one I read when I was a kid. This is one that I owned. I did not care for this book. I don't really like Dawn. Dawn was not my favorite babysitter by any means. 2 out of 5 stars for this one. Then I read Into the Darkest Corner by Elizabeth Haynes. I really liked this book. It is very chilling and just really almost hard to read at times. It is about a relationship that is very abusive, and it's just creepy how controlling people can get and how it can start pretty innocently and turn into something bad. And what I thought was really interesting is I read in some of the reviews that the scary thing is the way that this relationship started and the way she was treated by her boyfriend is the way a lot of young adult books, the relationships are in them. And I have to agree, there are some books that are pretty popular out there that are young adult that I've read that I didn't really feel like the relationships were healthy. And so this shows kind of how those relationships can get bad. Not all of. So I thought this was very good and a very interesting read, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read The Haunted House by Francine Pascal. This is book 3 in the Sweet Valley Twins series, and wow. I always liked Babysitter's Club better than Sweet Valley, and I'm remembering why. It's still that way. These twins, it's almost like Goofus and Gallant in the Highlights magazines. If you ever read Highlights, Goofus always does the wrong thing and Gallant always does the right thing. So you've got the good and the bad. That's how these books are. But Elizabeth, the good twin, isn't always as good as, she's portrayed. But this book is just made me sad because the way these girls treated the character in this book, Nora, was just wrong and sad. And I don't know, that Jessica Wakefield, I don't know. I'm going to continue reading them because they are like guilty pleasures. They're kind of fun to read and just to go back in time. But I can't believe the behavior of some of these characters. So 1 out of 5 stars on that one. Then I read Little Children by Tom Perrotta, and this one I really thought was interesting. I didn't know how to rate it though, because there was so much in this book that I just was really uncomfortable with, that I did not agree with, did not like, especially the whole adultery. There's adultery in this book, and that I just don't have any sympathy for whatsoever, no matter what the situation. I just don't like it, and that was a big part. But the book was so good to read. Like, it was so interesting that I pushed through the uncomfortable content and really was interested in what was going to happen next, but I didn't like what happened, but I liked how it was like written, if that makes any sense. I did try to watch the movie because I had it recorded on my DVR, which is why I read the book. I couldn't get through the movie. I just didn't. But the book was good, and I rated this 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read The Eternal Enemy by Christopher Pike. This book, another book that did a complete 180 turn. All of a sudden, you think one thing is happening, and all of a sudden it just completely turns everything upside down. It was really good. An interesting story and an interesting concept, and one of those stories where you have to really think about the plot to understand what is going on. But I liked it. I thought it was really good. And I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. The last book I read in September, The Pawn by Stephen James. And this book I had gotten this for free on my Kindle a long time ago. It's a crime story, but it is a Christian fiction story. But if you are not a Christian or you don't like Christian fiction, but you like crime fiction, I would definitely recommend that you read it. There was nothing in the book that made it seem like it was Christian fiction. No preaching whatsoever. And there are even reviews by people who are not Christians that loved the series. It's really good. It's about a serial killer who his MO is that he ties a yellow ribbon in the young women's hair and he places a pawn from a chess piece somewhere in the crime scene. And so the detective is Patrick Bowers, and his way of finding people is by their geographical location, like where the body is found, where they're taken when they're kidnapped, and so and the time that it happens is how he kind of finds them. It just was written really well. It was an interesting story. It kept me, I wanted to keep reading it constantly, and I just really liked it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It was just really good, and there are, I believe, 5 books in the series, and I'm going to continue, but I don't think you would have to read them in order. They kind of build upon each other, but I don't feel like it's something you would have to read in order, but it was really good. So that is my September wrap-up. I also filmed an October TBR, so look out for that. And yeah, so have a great day, and I will continue on with my bookshelf tours in time. It's a long process, but we'll get there. So thanks for watching, and have a great day. Bye.